Our presentation is called Context and Bioware Applications for Android. It's largely a continuation of a previous project we did, trying to make a globally accessible repository for everything that we can figure out that's going on the phone. So, largely, that's our research question. Are we able to actually determine the context of the user given everything that we can determine from the device? We've got a lot of sensors on there already. We've got lots of web access. We get all kinds of things about our location and our current context. And our idea is, what can we use this information for? What new things can we do with it? So that's kind of what this project's about. A little quick terminology. By context, I do not mean Android context, so not the Android.context.context. This is specifically data collected from the sensors, from web services, from social media, and also stuff that we have derived based on that. So taking all of this collectively, we're using this to distill into more useful information. A context provider is what we're calling this. It's a logical extension of the Android content provider with the idea that it's a central structure for storing all of this information. The way the current model works is that we want to use location. We register location listeners, and every single application does this. Well, that seems excessive and wasteful because largely you only need one thing to do this. So that's really what we're trying to do with a context provider, is trying to put all that in one place and make it queryable for everything. Largely this comes out of a topic called sensor fusion, which is basically taking multiple sensors and making them act as a higher level, more useful sensor. A common thing that you get a lot is like the accelerometer and the compasses together can be used to translate into a more higher level movement from that. Also network location, GPS location for better moving on here, Chris.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that we've been able to derive.
All right, I worked on a little bit of the movement, determined walking, running, and driving. If the GPS is available, use the speed that it gives back to you to figure out how fast they're going and report back. If that isn't available, use the accelerometer combined with a step counter to figure out if you're walking, running. And the driving part, just not really that great. The step counter really doesn't work for that. So that one could be used for like, if the accelerometer reads a large value, stopping all the G's you're pulling and whatnot. Term driving. Locations, we'll show you that in the demo. The local environment, Mike worked on the weather and such. Determining context. We have one listener that sits there and collects all the sensor data, then we have the higher level context, we call them monitors, that put these sensor readings together and maintain a state of what's going on. Example of some of the sensors available to us. Downloadable content, we pull things from Twitter. Currently we don't use Facebook to get your current social status. Web services, we utilize weather and stocks. The context provider, you don't want to, if everybody is listening for the GPS and the accelerometers, they're all making their own decision on what the user's doing. Somebody may determine that they're walking, somebody else may determine that they're running. So again, we want to centralize all this so that we disambiguate the situation. And here's a couple applications, potentials for this. The healthcare, which Mike works with his beat and what's the other one? The beat was a big one for the medical usages. Okay, so when we built our context provider that people could query, we had basically three options so that, or three methods that a user could use in their application to query us. Our first idea was intent. It sounded easy enough. They send an intent, they get back some sort of value. So I want to know the current movement. Are you running, walking, and so on. Well, this got to be a little much for the user because of the asynchronous nature of intents. You send a call, then you have to have the set result or intent result or something like that. It's a real disconnect. So we thought, okay, we'll use content provider. This is easy enough. Where the user can call, get content result, or they can just query our system. This was a little too heavyweight. You have, you can't just call get movement. You have to get a cursor, iterate through the cursor, and figure out the state, maybe translate it into a string or whatnot. So that ended up being too heavyweight, and we don't really have a database to back it. If you don't have a database to back it, you would have to implement the cursor object, which is also too much. So we ended up using a service using AIDL. It's synchronous, it's easily accessible, you just bind to it. The RPC is hidden from the user, which makes it even simpler. But for us at the back end, it may not be that simple. It becomes complicated when you're trying to, I think it's called parsable, which is like serializable when you send an object through the AIDL. How is the user on the other end going to know how to unserialize it? They don't have access to your object or something. So you'd have to go back to the old jar. I don't really like using jars. You have to keep them up to date. You have to include a jar in yours just to be able to translate it. But for now, the service works for simple key value pairs. And we'll look into some other sharing mechanism if it gets too complicated. Basically summing up what I just said. Advertising. Okay, yeah. One thing we wanted to add was content-aware advertisements. So looked into services like AdMob, DoubleClick, things like that. The problem with them is that you call their get ad, but they don't always have to return an ad to you. So if I'm using AdMob or AdSense in my program, every 15 seconds I'm calling get ad. Even in their interface, you configure how often you want an ad. And I matched them up, and it would not return an ad to me but once every 10 or 15 tries. So that was really annoying. I thought my code was busted, but it turns out that's how they all operate. On top of that, they have the facility to add context to the ad. So like if you want to add keywords, like I tried adding hamburger, McDonald's, and French fries to see if it would return me a McDonald's ad. No, it didn't. It didn't get anything close. It asked me if I wanted to boost my revenue of my mobile ad. And it's like, no. So the advertising we didn't include in the demo. One more interesting thing about advertising, so you have that problem. You call a single ad service, they don't give you an ad. There's an open source project called AdWorld that aggregates all these advertisement companies together. So if I don't get an ad from AdMob or from AdSense, I can call another third-party ad service and maybe get an ad from them. So right now we're collecting all this information and we have a current state. We'd like to, in the future, analyze the previous states to determine the current state or even a future state.
Send it back an XML file, images that floated.
Okay, well we basically built the context provider with a shake listener. So actually, if we want to actually get it, we just shake it, and I'll actually pull up our current context here. So you can see some of the stuff that we pulled in here. This is using the stocks API. So what do you want to say about it here?
Basically, Google has stock API. What I did the stocks in particular, I implemented. Google has two ways of doing it. They have a finance API and a REST API where you just make HTTP calls. I looked at doing both. The system will allow you to, it's not using that, but it will allow you to, if you have a Google Finance account, you can enter that information and it will query specific stocks that you have in your portfolio. I didn't want to sign up for a Google Finance account, but if you did that, it would work. The other thing is Yahoo also has an API. So I am not showing their API, but I did do the parsing for that. So if you had a Yahoo Finance account, you could use that instead. Basically, it just pulls off everything for all the stocks that you might be interested in.
And just some other stuff that we have in here. I mean, normal stuff, locations, those that were on Academic Way. I guess we don't get a neighborhood here. Movement, this is pretty complicated actually to figure out, but it's keeping track of total steps, how fast we're going. This is aggregated based on GPS largely. And we're also keeping track of the times. And another interesting feature we added here is actually this one. Apologies. The interesting thing we added here is actually clipboard supports of this. So actually, if you wanted to copy this, we'll actually copy these to the clipboard for purposes of using it in places. A lot of this is, I mean, everything we've pretty well discussed. A lot of these things on here, other than the derived here. This is some of the stuff we're trying to figure out, higher level stuff that we're figuring out. So based on the stock prices, we may be happy or not happy. Another interesting plug we found was the snooze button. If you use your phone for your alarm clock, it'll actually fire a special intent you can catch when you snooze it. So adding things like that. The shelter we determined based on views of the sky. Pocket is a pretty interesting one too, using the ambient light sensor to determine whether or not the phone is indeed in your pocket. It thinks it is right now. So I guess that's largely that. Questions?
I think the key point to understand is that this application, the one he just showed you, is using the service that we created. The idea is there's tons of context, and you're continually writing applications that may be using the same things over and over again. If you just use this service, it's use it one time, it's on the phone. Any application that's on that phone, if they want to know if you're running, they can ask our service, is this person running? If they want to know, is this person in a good mood? We can tell you, is this person in a good mood? So the idea is not that we are creating an application to use this, we're creating a service that developers could use to speed up their own development.
How easy was it to use sensor fusion?
What's that?
Sensor fusion, we talked about sensor fusion.
Oh, this is a logical extension of sensor fusion, since we're aggregating a lot of these already existing sensors.
I think there is a new API called sensor fusion for 2.3.
There's a lot of APIs for sensor fusion, notably any of the augmented reality things. Those are by definition sensor fusion.
So it's just a concept.
Yeah, it's a concept rather than an actual mechanism.